The palace of the Alpha King of Zerion stretched across the jagged cliffs like a fortress of silver and stone. The walls shone faintly in the dim light of the twin suns, and the air hummed with quiet energy, flowing from shields, lights, and the hidden machinery of the ancient kingdom. In this grand palace, everyone had a place, everyone had a purpose, but not Erilyn. She had no place, or at least she had been forced to live as though she did not exist. Erilyn's stepmother, Lady Marvella, had always kept her hidden. Not because she wanted to protect her, though she claimed that, but because she feared her. The prophecy said that one day a hidden girl, unseen, untouched, and quiet, would appear and be chosen by the Alpha King himself. Marvella had worked tirelessly to prevent it. She had told the servants to keep Erilyn behind locked doors, forbidden her to speak with the staff, and never allowed her to appear in the court. For years, Erilyn lived in the quiet wing of the palace, away from the grand halls and celebrations. Her chambers were small and bare, with only a bed, a table, and stacks of old scrolls and books left by her mother, the late Queen Lyria. She read constantly, learning about the stars, distant planets, wars, kings, and heroes. Though she could not walk freely in the palace gardens, she traveled in her mind to every corner of Zerion and beyond. She practiced her balance, studied strategy, and trained her mind to notice small details. She learned to observe, to wait, and to endure. Outside, the palace was alive with excitement. The mating ceremony would begin soon. Every decade, the Alpha King chose a mate from the daughters and young women of the kingdom. Each candidate had been brought from noble houses across the planet, dressed in the finest silks, trained in music, dance, and combat to show their worth. The halls glimmered with decorations, golden banners, floating crystal lights, and fountains that shimmered like liquid stars. Lady Marvella moved among the nobles with her usual elegance. She smiled, whispered, and nodded in all the right places, making sure Erilyn remained hidden. She is too young, she told anyone who asked. She must remain in preparation for the future. But her words were lies. She feared prophecy. She feared that the king might see Erilyn, and her own plans for power would be ruined. Erilyn did not despair, though she sometimes wept silently. She spent her days by the high window of her chamber, watching the sunlight fade over the cliffs, listening to the music and laughter drifting from the ceremony halls. She imagined walking among the candidates, being seen not as a shadow but as herself, free, confident, and strong. The night before the ceremony, Erilyn sat at her window tracing the patterns of the stars. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory. "Even when hidden, my daughter, the light will find you. One day your destiny will reach you no matter the walls around you." She pressed her hand against the cool glass and whispered, "I am ready." Suddenly, the faint hum of the palace energy shields changed. Erilyn felt it immediately. It was subtle, almost like a heartbeat shifting in the walls. She turned toward the door. Footsteps approached, deliberate, firm, not hesitant. She froze. Who could enter her wing at this hour? The door opened slowly, and then standing there, tall and commanding, was the Alpha King himself. His armor reflected the dim light, shining like molten gold. His eyes, golden and piercing, scanned the room. They were not the eyes of a man simply observing. He was searching, as if destiny itself had guided him here. "Erilyn," he said, his voice deep and calm, yet echoing with power. "You are the one I have been seeking." Erilyn froze. She had imagined this moment 1,000 times in her mind, but never like this, not so sudden, not so real. The king stepped closer, and she noticed his every movement was deliberate, controlled, and yet graceful. She could feel the air around him change, as if the walls themselves recognized his presence. How do you know my name?" she whispered. The prophecy spoke of a hidden daughter, untouched by court tricks, unseen by all but destiny itself, he replied. "And I have found her." Tears filled Erilyn's eyes. She had been hidden for so long. The world outside these walls had never seen her, never acknowledged her existence. And yet here was the most powerful man on Zerion, looking at her with certainty as if he had always known her. Outside, Lady Marvella paused in the corridor. She had felt the shift, the energy, the presence of the king, the unseen movement of destiny. Her carefully constructed plans, her control over the ceremony, her manipulation of every noble family, were collapsing in an instant. She had underestimated prophecy, underestimated fate, and underestimated Erilyn. Inside, the Alpha King extended his hand. Come with me, Erilyn. It is time for the world to know you. Erilyn hesitated. Her life had been behind walls and shadows, but her mother's voice, her own long years of study and preparation, gave her courage. Slowly, she placed her hand in his. The moment she did, the energy in the room seemed to hum louder, the walls glowing faintly as if recognizing her destiny. The king smiled, not as a ruler, but as someone who understood her completely. The hidden ones are always the truest, he said. They endure. They learn. They survive in silence. And now you will walk into the world as yourself. Tears rolled down Erilyn's cheeks. She had dreamed of being seen, of being more than a shadow in the palace. And now finally she was chosen. The Alpha King had chosen her. The palace around her seemed different, alive in a new way. The music, the lights, the distant laughter, they were no longer barriers, but signs of a world ready to embrace her. And though she did not yet know the challenges that awaited, the jealousy of nobles, the intrigues of court, or the dangers that came with being chosen, she felt ready. Lady Marvella's face twisted with shock and fury. Her schemes, her control, her manipulation, all crumbled before the truth. The hidden daughter had been found, and the Alpha King had chosen her. Erilyn followed the king down the corridor she had never walked before. Her steps were careful, yet each one was filled with purpose. She looked at the walls, at the paintings and banners, at the flowing fountains. Everything had been beautiful and distant from her before, but now she was part of it. She had been hidden, yes, but no longer invisible. As they emerged into the grand hall, the candidates froze. The nobles gasped, and the king, standing tall beside Erilyn, announced to the room, "I have found the one I seek. She is not among the candidates, not among the noble houses. She has been hidden, but now she will stand before all." Erilyn's heart pounded. She met the eyes of every noble, every courtier, and they saw her for the first time, not as a shadow, not as a rumor, not as a hidden daughter, but as Erilyn, the one chosen by the Alpha King. For the first time in her life, she felt the warmth of recognition, the power of being seen, and the hope that her destiny was finally beginning. The sun set over Zerion's cliffs, painting the sky crimson and gold. And within the palace walls, the hidden daughter stepped into a new world, one that she would shape with courage, wisdom, and heart. The journey had begun, and nothing could hide her again. The grand hall of the palace sparkled like a field of stars. Banners of silver and gold hung from the high ceilings, and crystal chandeliers floated mid-air, casting soft light on the polished floors. Fountains bubbled with glowing water, reflecting the colors of the hanging lanterns. Music echoed through the hall, a combination of stringed instruments and strange alien tones that resonated deep in the chest. Today was the day of the mating ceremony, a day the kingdom had been waiting for a decade. Erilyn's heart raced as she entered the hall. She walked beside the Alpha King, whose golden eyes scanned the room with quiet authority. All eyes turned toward her, noble families whispering, some gasping in surprise. None of the candidates had expected the hidden daughter to appear. Erilyn felt their stares, sharp and curious, but she held her head high. The king had chosen her, and that was all that mattered. "Do not be afraid," the king whispered as they approached the center of the hall. "They may stare. They may doubt. But you are the one I have chosen." Erilyn nodded, swallowing her nervousness. She had spent years hidden, studying and preparing herself in silence, and now she was stepping into a world full of color, life, and judgment. Every footstep echoed across the hall, drawing attention. She felt exposed, yet strong. The candidates were arranged on the raised platform, each in gowns that shimmered like flowing light. They moved with practiced grace, smiling and curtsying to the audience, performing the rituals of presentation they had trained for over months. Many glanced at Erilyn with suspicion, envy, and curiosity. She ignored them, focusing on the king at her side. The master of ceremonies, an elderly man with silver hair and a long staff, stepped forward. His voice boomed through the hall. "Welcome, nobles and citizens of Zerion. Today we witness the mating ceremony, where the Alpha King shall choose the mate who will stand by his side, guiding the kingdom into the next decade. Let the candidates present themselves." Erilyn's pulse quickened. She was about to step into the arena of judgment where beauty, grace, and skill were measured carefully by the court. She had not been trained like the other candidates. She had not been shown how to dance, how to perform, or how to mimic the gestures of courtly grace. But she had something stronger. She had truth, endurance, and a mind that had grown wise in hiding. The candidates began their demonstrations. Some sang haunting melodies that made the air shimmer. Others performed intricate dances moving with elegance and precision. Some demonstrated skill with weapons, their bows and blades moving with deadly grace. The king watched all of them carefully, but his gaze kept returning to Arelyn, who had not yet stepped onto the platform. Finally, he gestured to her. "Come forward, Arelyn. Let them see you not as hidden but as yourself." A murmur ran through the hall. The noble girls glanced at each other, some smiling with forced politeness, others narrowing their eyes. Arelyn's stepmother, Lady Marvella, had entered the hall quietly, hoping to maintain control. Her expression was calm, but her mind raced. She had hidden Arelyn for so long, and now the king had brought her into the center of attention. Arelyn stepped onto the platform. The light caught her silver hair, making it glow like moonlight. Her golden eyes, sharp and bright, scanned the room, meeting the eyes of the king. She felt a quiet strength in that gaze. She took a deep breath and stood tall. The master of ceremonies studied her, slightly confused. "Who is this candidate?" "She is not among the listed daughters." The Alpha King spoke, his voice firm and commanding. "She is the one I have chosen. She has been hidden, protected from the eyes of court intrigue. But her spirit, her mind, and her heart have prepared her for this moment." A silence fell over the hall. Some nobles whispered nervously. Some laughed quietly, thinking this was a prank. But the king's presence silenced all doubts. His choice was not based on tradition, nor on the approval of the court. It was based on destiny. The ceremony continued, and Arelyn was asked to demonstrate her abilities. A weapon was presented to her, a staff made of lightweight metal designed to test skill and agility. She took it, feeling the familiar weight in her hands. She had practiced in secret, using sticks and rods in the hidden wing, imagining battles and challenges. When she moved, it was not perfect like the trained candidates. Her steps were careful, her strikes not polished by months of performance. But there was something in her movement that made the audience pause, a fluidity, a focus, a quiet confidence. The king watched her closely, his expression unreadable, yet his golden eyes betrayed approval. After the demonstration, Arelyn was asked to speak before the court. Her voice, soft at first, grew steady as she continued. She spoke of patience, of observation, of learning in silence. She spoke of the stars, the history of the kingdom, and the importance of truth and endurance. The hall was quiet. Nobles shifted uncomfortably. They were used to flattery, rehearsed words, and grand performances. Arelyn offered none of that. She spoke only what she knew and what she felt. When she finished, the king nodded. "This is the one I have chosen. Not because she performs like the others, but because she has endured, learned, and grown. She sees the world clearly without deception, and she will stand by my side as my equal." Whispers erupted across the hall. Some of the candidates looked offended. Some looked impressed. Lady Marvella's face twisted in fury. She had controlled this court for years, manipulating families and politics, and now her hidden stepdaughter had stolen the king's favor in one quiet moment. Arelyn's heart pounded. She knew this was only the beginning. Court intrigue was dangerous. There would be those who would try to undermine her, to spread rumors, to challenge her right to stand beside the king. But for the first time in her life, she felt ready. She had been hidden for years, but now she was seen, and the king's choice gave her courage. After the ceremony, the king led Arelyn through the palace gardens. The night air was cool, and the twin moons reflected silver light across the fountains. The king spoke quietly so only she could hear. "You have been hidden, Arelyn, but that has made you strong. You have learned patience, observation, and courage. These will serve you well in the court. Many will challenge you, try to unsettle you, but you must trust yourself and your instincts. I thank you, my king," Arelyn replied softly. "I never imagined this moment. I never imagined being seen like this." "You deserve it," he said simply. "Your spirit has always been ready. Now the world must catch up." As they walked, Arelyn saw the palace in a new light. The gardens were alive with soft glowing plants. Creatures of Zarian flitted among the paths, and distant towers glimmered under the moons. This was no longer a place of confinement. It was a world full of possibilities. But even as Arelyn marveled at the beauty, she knew challenges awaited. She would face jealous rivals, cunning nobles, and secrets of the court she had never known. Yet the quiet strength that had carried her through years of hiding was now hers to wield openly. She would not hide again. In the palace, Lady Marvella retreated to her private chambers. Her control had been broken. The Alpha King had chosen the one she tried to erase from existence. Rage and fear battled within her, but she forced a calm expression. She would find a way to regain influence. But for now, Erilyn had the king's favor, and that meant the hidden daughter was no longer hidden. As Erilyn lay in her chamber that night, she thought of everything that had happened. The ceremony, the king's choice, the whispers of the nobles. She closed her eyes, feeling both excitement and determination. Her life had changed forever. She had been hidden, unseen, and forgotten by many. But now she was chosen. She was visible. She was important. And tomorrow the real challenges would begin.